There's a secret to squatting deeply, comfortably, with no kind of mobility training or stretching, or weak nerds giving you jargon-filled useless advice. Deep squatting is all about a particular movement of your hip called external rotation. And if you're unable to squat deeply, it's just that you literally don't know how. Almost always it's not a kind of mobility problem. Because I've had tons of people with trash mobility develop Olympic level, third world perfect squats with no other training whatsoever, but just figuring out the cues I'm about to show you. If you take your foot and kind of turn it out so that the weight of your body is shifted to the pinky toe side, you'll notice that that turn creates a rotation that goes up through your knee, turning your knee out, and through your hip socket, turning your hip out. That's external rotation. And it shouldn't be confused with abduction, another movement of the hip, which is actually just moving the knee out away from your central line. That's a linear movement, not a rotation. The reason I'm stressing this point is because both of these hip motions kinda look like the traditional cue of pushing your knees out. But if you are literally pushing your knees out, you're abducting and not externally rotating, which will completely fuck your mechanics. Once you understand hip external rotation, squatting very deep is pretty simple. Just arch your lower back, then bend your knees as deeply as you can before you reach the point where your heels start to try to come off the ground. It's very important that you do not try to lean forward as you're doing this. It's a straight up and down movement with your knees, and if you try to consciously lean forward, you'll hinge too much and throw off your mechanics. Now, from that bent knee arched position, do that external rotation cue through your feet into your knees and your hips as you actively pull your legs up. That should give you the ability to descend very smoothly into a perfect deep squat without compromising your lower back position. By contrast, just letting yourself fall down without any specific intention will tend to make you round your lower back. This is another point where things tend to get squirrely for a lot of people. You do literally have to try to pick up your legs, kind of like a sumo wrestler, except both of them at the same time. If you're keeping an arch, this will feel extremely awkward unless you do it in a very particular way. There is a sweet spot of pulling your legs up diagonally alongside external rotation of the hip that will allow you to be able to lift your legs. But otherwise, trying to arch your back and lift your leg forward or pick up your knee forward should feel almost impossible. You play with this while standing on one leg with an arch or by hanging off a pull-up bar with an arch. You should be able to find this sweet spot and have it make sense. If you've got these cues down and they're relatively unfamiliar to you and you're not like freakishly flexible, the bottom of a squat will start generating an unbelievably intense and excruciating stretch through your groin and your adductors, and you'll probably even start feeling stretches where your ankle meets the front of your foot. That's how you know you're doing these things properly. You're now essentially unlocking the ability to train ranges of motion that you didn't have before. And the more you do squats in the style, the less you'll experience these stretching feelings, and the more durability and mobility you'll naturally develop as a result of your training. In fact, I think that these mechanics make ATG squatting very much so a knee and back bulletproofer in a similar vein to knees over toes guy and the deep split squats he advocates for. I intend on making a more in-depth video on everything I know about squatting in the near future, but I truly think this is probably the most important thing anyone will ever teach you about squatting, and nobody ever mentions it. Try out this technique and see if you could squat ATG without any other prior training. I bet you can with enough trial and error. Happy lifting.